The morning sky was pale blue when Tom closed the door of his small city apartment for the last time. The sound of the lock clicking made him pause for a moment. For 7 years, this place had been his and his daughter's home. It had seen laughter, tears, birthdays, and nights of quiet struggle. But now it was time to go. His daughter Lena, a cheerful 7-year-old girl, stood beside him holding a stuffed bear. Her backpack was almost as big as she was. She looked up at her father with bright eyes. "Daddy, are we really moving to the farm?" Tom smiled faintly and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. It's time for a new start." He tried to sound confident, but inside he was unsure. A week ago, a letter had arrived from a small law office in a town called Green Valley. The letter said that Tom had inherited a farm from his late Uncle Raymond, a man he barely remembered. The lawyer said the property had been left untouched for years. Tom didn't have much to lose, so he decided to see it. Life in the city had been hard after his wife passed away. He had worked long hours at a delivery company, barely earning enough to pay rent and buy food. When the rent went up again, he knew it was time for change. Maybe the old farm would give them a chance to start fresh. The van they owned was old and noisy, but it still ran. They packed what little they had: clothes, a few dishes, Lena's school books, and Tom's toolbox. Before leaving, Tom looked around the empty apartment one last time. Every corner carried a memory, but those memories also carried pain. He sighed, closed the door, and started the engine. The city slowly faded in the rearview mirror as tall buildings turned into open roads. Lena sat quietly for a while, then began to hum a tune she made up. She loved adventures. For her, this was not the end of something, but the start of something new. The drive took almost 6 hours. They passed green fields, sleepy towns, and winding roads surrounded by hills. Birds flew low, and the smell of soil filled the air. Lena pressed her face against the window, amazed by the wide-open spaces. "Daddy, look, cows!" she shouted with delight when they passed a pasture. Tom smiled again. It had been a long time since he had seen her this happy. "Maybe we'll have cows too one day," he said jokingly. When they reached Green Valley, the town looked peaceful. There was a small grocery store, a bakery, a few old houses, and a gas station. Everyone they passed smiled and waved. It was a place where people still knew each other's names. They followed the directions from the lawyer and soon turned onto a narrow dirt road. At the end of the path stood the farm. It was large but clearly forgotten. The wooden fence leaned in places and wild grass grew tall. The farmhouse was 2 stories high. Its white paint faded to gray. One window shutter swung loosely in the wind. An old barn stood nearby, its red color almost gone. Tom parked the van and stepped out. He looked around slowly. For a moment he felt both nervous and curious. "This is it, Lena," he said quietly. "Our new home." Lena ran forward, her shoes crunching on gravel. "It's big," she said, spinning around with open arms. "Can we live here forever?" Tom laughed softly. "We'll see about that. Let's check if it's even safe inside first." They pushed open the farmhouse door. It creaked loudly. Dust filled the air, and sunlight entered through broken windows. There were old wooden chairs, a dining table, and a fireplace filled with ashes. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the floor creaked with every step. Lena looked around with wonder. "It's like a storybook house," she said. Tom smiled. "A story that needs some cleaning." He opened a window to let in fresh air. The walls were covered with old family photos. One picture caught his attention. It showed a strong man standing beside a tractor, smiling proudly. Tom guessed it was his Uncle Raymond. He had only met him once as a child, but something about the man's face seemed kind. As they explored the rooms, they found a small bedroom that would be perfect for Lena. It had a window facing the fields. She placed her bear on the dusty bed and began to imagine how she would decorate the room. Outside, Tom walked toward the barn. The door was heavy and made a loud creak as he opened it. Inside were broken tools, old boxes, and hay scattered on the floor. There was a faint smell of oil and earth. He found an old tractor covered in a thick layer of dust. Its tires were flat, but something about it felt special. Maybe it could still run with some repair. Tom walked out and looked across the fields. The land stretched far, with gentle hills and tall grass swaying in the wind. Even though it was wild and overgrown, he could feel its strength. This land had once fed a family. Maybe it could again. When the sun began to set, the sky turned orange and pink. Tom and Lena sat on the porch with sandwiches they had brought. The air smelled of grass and distant flowers. Fireflies began to appear, lighting up the fields like small stars. Lena leaned against her father. "Daddy, I like it here," she said softly. Tom looked down at her. "Me too," he said, surprised at his own words. "It feels different, quiet, peaceful. Can we stay?" she asked, her voice hopeful. He thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, Lena, we'll stay. We'll try to make this place our home." Lena smiled and hugged her bear tightly. That night they laid their sleeping bags on the wooden floor. The house was old, and the wind whistled through the cracks. But Tom felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. As he lay awake, listening to the sounds of the countryside, his thoughts wandered. He imagined fixing the roof, planting vegetables, and maybe getting some chickens. He knew it would take time and hard work, but at least it was a chance to build something real. Before he drifted to sleep, Tom whispered quietly, "We're going to be farmers." In the silence that followed, something outside the farmhouse made a soft metallic sound, almost like a chain moving. Tom lifted his head, but the sound stopped. He listened for a moment longer, then closed his eyes again. What Tom didn't know was that under the soil of that forgotten farm, hidden beneath an old storage cellar, lay something that would change their lives forever. A secret that would turn their quiet dream into a story the whole world would one day hear. The first morning at the farm came with the sound of birds. Tom woke up early. For a moment he forgot where he was, but then the smell of fresh air reminded him. He sat up and looked around the dusty old room. The morning light came through cracks in the window, falling over the wooden floor. Lena was still sleeping beside her bear, wrapped in a blanket. She looked peaceful, something he had not seen in a long time. Tom stood up quietly and went outside. The air was cool, and the fields were covered in dew. A light fog hung over the land, and he could hear the distant call of a rooster from somewhere. It felt strange and calm. He took a deep breath and smiled. This was their new beginning. He started walking around the property. The farmhouse needed work, that was clear. The roof had holes, some windows were broken, and the porch steps were loose. But the structure still felt strong. The barn was old but solid, and the land stretched far. If he worked hard, maybe they could make it beautiful again. When he came back inside, Lena was awake. She rubbed her eyes and smiled at him. "Good morning, Daddy. Can we go outside?" Tom nodded. "Yes, but stay close. There's a lot to explore." Lena put on her shoes and ran out the door, laughing as she stepped into the wet grass. Tom followed, watching her spin around under the sunlight. She was full of life, and seeing her happy made his heart warm. After breakfast, Tom decided to clean the house. They opened all the windows to let the air flow through. Dust danced in the sunlight as they worked together. Lena wiped the furniture while Tom swept the floors and checked the walls for damage. They found old furniture, books, and dishes still in place. It felt like someone had left in a hurry years ago. In the kitchen drawer, Tom found a small notebook with faded writing. It looked like a diary. The cover said, "Raymond's Notes." He opened a few pages. The handwriting was messy, but he could read some lines. It mentioned crops, machines, and a few strange numbers written beside words like storage, field tunnel, and north cellar. Tom didn't understand it yet, but kept the notebook. Maybe it was useful. By afternoon, the sun was high and the house felt much cleaner. Tom took Lena to see the barn again. Inside, she pointed to the old tractor. "Can we make it run, Daddy?" she asked with excitement. Tom smiled. "Maybe, but it will take some time. We'll need tools and fuel." They spent hours exploring. Behind the barn, they found a small pond with frogs jumping near the edge. A few apple trees stood nearby, though most of their fruit had fallen and spoiled. Lena picked one of the better apples, polished it on her shirt, and took a bite. "It tastes funny," she said, making a face. Tom laughed. "It's probably been there too long. We'll plant new ones." That night, after a long day of cleaning and exploring, they sat again on the porch. The stars filled the sky like shining dust. There were no city lights, no traffic, only the soft sound of crickets. Lena leaned her head on Tom's shoulder. "I like it here," she whispered. Tom looked up at the stars. "Me too, sweetheart. I think this is where we belong." Over the next few days, they worked hard. Tom repaired the porch steps, fixed the windows, and made a small garden patch near the house. Lena helped by watering the plants and picking up rocks from the soil. Sometimes neighbors from the town drove by and waved. One afternoon, a friendly old man stopped his truck near the gate. He introduced himself as Mr. Hill, a farmer who lived a few miles away. "So you're Raymond's nephew," he said, shaking Tom's hand. He was a good man. Kept to himself, though. Shame what happened to this place. Tom nodded. "I didn't know him well. I just hope to bring the farm back to life." Mr. Hill smiled. "That's good to hear. If you need help or tools, just ask. Folks around here look after each other." Lena waved at him cheerfully. The old man chuckled and gave her a small bag of apples before leaving. That evening, Tom sat on the porch again, thinking about the notebook he had found. He opened it under the light of an old lantern. Most of it looked like daily farm notes, but a few pages near the end were strange. They had sketches of underground tunnels and something labeled "hidden room" under the barn. There was also a sentence written in shaky letters. "Keep it safe. They must never find it." Tom frowned. It sounded mysterious. What could his uncle have been hiding? Maybe old equipment or tools. He didn't think much more of it that night, but curiosity stayed in his mind. The next morning he went to the barn again. Lena was playing near the pond, so he decided to look around quietly. He pushed aside some old boxes and barrels, checking the walls and floor. After a while, his foot hit something hard. The sound was hollow. He knelt down and brushed the dust away. There was a wooden panel on the floor that looked different from the rest. He tried pulling it, but it didn't move. After some effort, he used a crowbar from the toolbox. The board lifted with a creak, revealing a narrow opening. A small staircase led down into darkness. Tom's heart beat faster. Maybe it was the north cellar his uncle had written about. He looked around and grabbed a flashlight from a shelf. The beam cut through the dust as he climbed down slowly. The air below was cool and still. The stairs led to a small underground room made of stone. There were shelves filled with metal boxes and wooden crates. Some were labeled with faded words. One crate was marked, "Storage 1957. He opened it carefully and found old tools, silver coins, and small glass bottles. Another box had rolls of paper that looked like maps or plans. He didn't understand what he was looking at. It seemed like his uncle had kept more than just farm equipment down here. Then, on the far wall, Tom noticed a small metal safe. It was rusty but strong. The handle was locked. Tom stood there for a long time thinking, why would his uncle build a hidden cellar and store a safe inside it? He remembered the last line in the notebook and felt a strange chill. Before he could look further, he heard Lena calling from outside. "Daddy, where are you?" Tom quickly closed the wooden panel covering the entrance. He didn't want to scare her. When he came out, Lena ran to him and hugged his leg. "I thought you left," she said. He smiled and patted her head. "I'm right here. Just checking the barn." They went back to the house for lunch, but Tom's thoughts stayed on what he had found. That night, while Lena slept, he sat at the kitchen table, looking at the notebook again. The maps showed lines running under the property, some leading toward the hills beyond the farm. Whatever his uncle had been doing, it wasn't simple farming. Tom felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Maybe it was just old junk, or maybe it was something important. He didn't know yet. As the wind blew softly outside and the moonlight touched the fields, Tom made a quiet promise to himself. He would find out what his uncle had hidden. He would uncover the truth about this land. What he didn't realize was that his discovery was only the beginning. The secret beneath that farm was far greater than he could imagine, and soon, it would change everything for him and Lena. The next morning, Tom woke up earlier than usual. The sun had not fully risen and the air was cool. He sat on the edge of his bed thinking about what he had found under the barn. The image of the hidden staircase and the metal safe would not leave his mind. He knew there was something more to it, something his uncle had wanted to protect. Lena was still sleeping, holding her bear close. Tom smiled at her innocence. He didn't want her to worry or get scared, so he decided not to tell her about the cellar yet. After breakfast, he told her he was going to fix the fence near the barn. She nodded happily and went to pick flowers near the pond. Tom took his tools and went to the barn again, pretending to work outside. When he was sure Lena was busy, he went inside, lifted the wooden panel, and climbed down the stairs with his flashlight. The air below was still cold and smelled of soil and rust. The flashlight beam moved over the stone walls and the shelves full of old crates. He walked slowly toward the metal safe. The lock looked strong, but years of time had made it rusty. He tried to turn the handle, but it didn't move. He pulled harder, but it stayed locked. Tom sighed. He didn't want to break it because he wasn't sure what was inside. He looked around the cellar again, hoping to find something useful. On one of the shelves, he found a small wooden box. Inside it were old keys. He tried one after another until, on the fourth try, he heard a faint click. The safe handle moved. He took a deep breath and opened the door slowly. Inside the safe were several metal cases stacked neatly. They looked heavy. He pulled one out, brushed off the dust, and opened it. What he saw made him freeze. The box was full of gold bars, shining even in the dim light. For a moment, Tom could not believe his eyes. He thought it was impossible. He touched one of the bars. It was cold and heavy, real gold. He quickly opened another box. It was filled with more gold bars and several old coins that looked ancient. In another box, there were papers sealed in plastic. The top page said, "Property rights and shares." Tom felt dizzy. He sat down on the ground trying to understand what he was seeing. His uncle had left a fortune hidden under the barn. But why? Why would he hide it instead of using it? He opened one of the sealed papers. It had the name of a mining company, dated more than 40 years ago. His uncle's name, Raymond, was written at the bottom. It seemed that his uncle had invested in something long ago and never told anyone. Tom felt his hands shake. This could be worth millions, maybe more. But with that thought came fear. If someone had hidden it, maybe others had been looking for it. He remembered the last line from the notebook. They must never find it. He looked around again. The cellar was quiet, but he suddenly felt like he was being watched. He quickly closed the safe, locked it, and put the key in his pocket. He turned off the flashlight and climbed back up the stairs, closing the wooden panel carefully behind him. When he stepped out of the barn, Lena was running toward him with flowers in her hands. "Daddy, look what I found," she said happily. Tom smiled, trying to hide his nervousness. "They're beautiful," he said. He took her hand and led her back to the house. The rest of the day went on as usual. They cooked lunch, fixed the fence, and watered the garden. But Tom's mind was somewhere else. Every time he looked at the barn, he thought about the gold and papers hidden below. He knew this secret could change their lives forever, but it could also bring danger if the wrong people found out. That evening, Mr. Hill stopped by again. He brought a basket of fresh vegetables and sat with Tom on the porch. They talked about farming and weather. After a while, Tom asked him carefully, "Did you know much about my Uncle Raymond?" Mr. Hill nodded. "A bit. He was a quiet man, but very smart. People said he was good with machines and business, then one day he stopped going to town. Some thought he went away, others said he was hiding from someone. Nobody really knew." Tom frowned. "Hiding from someone?" Mr. Hill shrugged. There were stories. Some said he was working on something valuable. Others said he had made enemies after selling land for mining. But that was long ago. Nobody knows what really happened. When the old man left, Tom sat in silence. Everything started to make sense. Maybe the mining company papers were connected to those stories. Maybe his uncle had hidden the gold to keep it safe from whoever was after him. That night, Tom couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, looking at the moonlit fields. He kept thinking about what to do. Should he report it? Should he keep it a secret? What if someone came looking for it? Early the next morning, he went into town to buy supplies. At the store, people were friendly and asked about the farm. But one man sitting near the counter watched him quietly. He was tall, wearing a hat and a leather jacket. When Tom paid for his items and turned to leave, the man spoke. "You're the new owner of the Raymond farm, aren't you?" he asked in a calm voice. Tom stopped for a moment. "Yes." "Why do you ask?" The man smiled faintly. "Just curious. That land's been empty for years. Some people say old Raymond hid something valuable there." Tom forced a small laugh. "All I've found so far is broken furniture." The man nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed sharp. "If you ever find something, let folks know. Secrets from the past can be dangerous." Tom left the store quickly, his heart beating fast. He didn't know who that man was, but something about him felt wrong. When he returned to the farm, he checked every door and window before going inside. Lena ran to him and hugged him. "Daddy, are we safe here?" she asked softly, sensing his worry. Tom knelt down and smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. We're safe. I promise." But deep inside, he wasn't sure. He knew someone else might be searching for what his uncle had hidden. The gold, the papers, the secret, none of it felt simple anymore. That night, after putting Lena to bed, Tom went to the barn again. He lifted the panel and went down to the cellar. The air felt heavier than before. He opened one of the boxes and looked again at the gold bars. They were real. He counted them. There were more than 40 bars. Each one could be worth a fortune. He closed the safe again and sat in silence. The notebook lay open beside him. There were still a few pages he hadn't read. On one of them, his uncle had written a line that made his heart pound. It said, "If someone finds this, protect Lena. The secret belongs to the family, not the world." Tom froze. The words "protect Lena" felt strange. How did his uncle know about her? She hadn't even been born when Raymond was alive. Maybe the message wasn't meant for her directly, but for whoever came after him. Tom climbed out of the cellar again. As he stepped outside, the wind blew stronger, and he noticed headlights far away near the road. A car was parked there for a few minutes, then slowly drove away. He stood in the dark, watching the road until the lights disappeared. His hands clenched tightly. He now understood that this was no ordinary inheritance. His uncle's secret was powerful and dangerous. And from that moment, Tom knew one thing for sure. Someone else already knew about it. The next few days were calm on the surface, but Tom could not relax. Every time he looked at the road, he remembered the car that had stopped near the farm. Whoever that man in the store was, Tom felt sure the visit was not a coincidence. Someone knew about the farm's hidden secret. Tom began to make small changes for safety. He replaced the old locks on the doors, added wooden planks to the windows, and kept his flashlight and toolbox near the door. He did not want to frighten Lena, so he made it all seem like part of normal repairs. Each morning he worked in the field, and Lena played nearby. She was learning about plants and helped water the small garden they had started. Her laughter filled the air, bringing lightness to the place. But behind Tom's calm face, his mind stayed on the gold hidden beneath the barn. One afternoon, while fixing the fence, Tom noticed tire tracks near the edge of the property. They were fresh. He bent down to check them closely. It looked like someone had parked there recently. His heartbeat quickened. He decided to walk down the dirt road to see if anyone had been around. But there was no sign of another person. That evening, when the sun turned orange and dipped below the hills, Tom sat on the porch watching the road again. A slow chill crept over him as he saw a figure walking toward the gate. The man wore the same hat and jacket as the one he had seen at the store. Tom stood up and walked to meet him halfway. "Evening," the man said with a polite smile. "Hope you don't mind me stopping by. I was driving through and thought I'd say hello." Tom forced a small smile. "Evening? Can I help you with something?" The man leaned on the fence. "Name's Mr. Burke. I used to know your Uncle Raymond. Heard you inherited this land. I was hoping to take a look around. Brought back memories, you know." Tom stayed still. "I appreciate that, but the place is in bad shape. Not safe for visitors right now." Mr. Burke nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the barn in the distance. "Understandable. He was a good man, your uncle. Kept secrets, too. Did you ever hear about the company he worked with years ago?" Tom's heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. "Not really. I didn't know him well." Burke smiled thinly. He invested in some land deals. Some folks say he kept something valuable here. I tried to help him once, but he didn't trust anyone. Shame he died before finishing his work. Tom crossed his arms. I wouldn't know about that. I'm just trying to fix the place up for my daughter. The man tipped his hat. Well, if you ever find anything you can't handle, let me know. I deal with property records and old contracts. I could help you sort things out. Tom nodded slightly, trying not to show suspicion. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind. Mr. Burke gave a short smile and walked away. His boots crunched on the gravel as he left. Tom stood there watching until the man disappeared down the road. When he turned back toward the house, Lena was standing on the porch holding her bear. Who was that man? She asked softly. Tom walked over and knelt beside her. Just someone who used to know your uncle. Nothing to worry about. But inside he knew it was more than that. Mr. Burke had come looking for something, and Tom was almost certain he already knew about the hidden cellar. That night, Tom could not sleep. He sat by the window with the notebook open in front of him. He read his uncle's last words again. They must never find it. He ran his hand over the page, thinking about how much danger this secret could bring. The next morning, he decided to act. He needed to move the gold somewhere safe before anyone else found it. When Lena went outside to feed the birds, Tom slipped into the barn. He opened the wooden panel and climbed down. The air below was colder than before. The safe still stood against the wall, and the metal cases were untouched. Tom opened one and looked at the gold again. It still felt unreal. He thought for a long time about what to do. Finally, he decided to take a few bars and hide them somewhere else on the property. That way, even if someone discovered the cellar, they would not find everything. He wrapped 3 gold bars in an old cloth and placed them in a toolbox. He planned to bury them near the apple trees behind the house. As he climbed back up, he heard something outside the barn. The sound of footsteps. He froze, his heart racing. Slowly, he moved toward the door and peeked through a gap in the wood. Mr. Burke was standing near the fence again, looking straight at the barn. Tom stayed silent, holding his breath. After a few minutes, the man walked away toward the road. Tom waited until he was gone, then came out of the barn quickly. He buried the toolbox under a tree and covered it with soil and leaves. Later that evening, as he was making dinner, Lena looked at him and asked, "Daddy, why are you worried?" Tom smiled softly. "Just tired from work. We'll be fine, don't worry." After dinner, Lena went to bed early. Tom sat on the porch again. The moon was bright and the air was quiet, but he could not shake the feeling that someone was watching the house. He walked to the barn one more time to check the door. Everything was locked. When he turned to go back, he saw a faint light far off near the trees. Someone was out there with a flashlight. Tom quickly turned off the house lights and went inside. He looked out from the window and saw the light moving slowly toward the barn. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out quietly, moving around the side of the house to stay hidden. The light stopped near the fence, and Tom saw the outline of Mr. Burke again. The man was pointing his light toward the barn door, looking at the ground. Tom clenched his jaw and decided to confront him. He walked forward and called out, "What are you doing here?" Mr. Burke turned quickly, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, didn't mean to scare you. I was driving by and thought I saw movement near your barn. Wanted to make sure everything's fine." Tom's eyes narrowed. "I told you this place isn't open for visitors. Please stay off my land." Burke raised his hand slightly. No harm meant. "Just being friendly." Tom stepped closer. "Friendly people don't walk around other folks' property in the dark." The man's smile faded. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Tom. I know what's under that barn. You can't hide it forever." Tom's heart pounded. "I don't know what you're talking about." Burke looked at him steadily. "Your uncle and I had an agreement. That gold belongs to more than one person. Think about your daughter before doing something foolish." Tom's fists tightened, but he stayed calm. "Leave now or I'll call the sheriff." Burke stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away toward his truck. The sound of the engine echoed through the night as he drove off. Tom stood there breathing heavily. He knew things had changed. The secret was no longer safe. He went inside and checked on Lena. She was asleep, peaceful and unaware of the danger. He sat beside her for a while, holding her hand gently. In the morning, Tom decided he needed help. He drove into town and went to see Mr. Hill. The old farmer listened carefully as Tom told him about Burke and the cellar. Mr. Hill's eyes widened. "That's serious, Tom. Burke's not a man to trust. I've heard rumors about him for years. He's been after old investments trying to claim other people's property. Tom nodded. He said the gold belonged to him too. Mr. Hill shook his head. Don't believe him. If your uncle left it to you, it's yours. But you have to be careful. That man won't stop easily. Tom thanked him and drove home, his mind full of worry and plans. He knew now that he had to protect both the secret and his daughter. The farm was no longer just a home. It had become a battlefield of silence and secrets. As the sun set that evening, Tom stood near the barn again. The air felt heavy with coming trouble. He looked at the land, the house, and the small garden they had built. Everything was worth fighting for. He whispered to himself, "No one is taking this from us." But he also knew that the storm was only beginning, and soon the truth about the gold would bring more than one visitor to Green Valley. The morning sun rose over Green Valley with a golden glow. Tom stood outside the farmhouse looking across the fields. The air was crisp and the soft sound of birdsong filled the quiet farm. He breathed deeply. After days of worry, fear, and uncertainty, he had made a decision. The gold hidden under the barn was valuable, but protecting his daughter was more important than anything else. Lena ran toward him from the garden, holding a small watering can. "Daddy, look. The plants are growing," she said with excitement. Tom smiled and ruffled her hair. "They are, Lena. You've done a great job helping them grow." Her laughter warmed his heart. Despite the tension of the past days, moments like this reminded him why he had chosen to stay. They had a chance to build something real and good together. The first step in his plan was to move the gold again, further from the barn and out of reach from prying eyes. Tom found an old shed at the far end of the property. It had been empty for years and was hidden behind a row of apple trees. The shed's door was strong and the wooden walls were thick. He carefully carried the metal cases and the small safe inside, arranging them in a corner. Then he placed loose soil and old leaves on top to disguise their presence. Tom wiped his brow and looked around the shed. It was safer here. Even if someone came onto the property, they would never think to check this hidden corner. He felt a small wave of relief. That afternoon, Mr. Burke returned. He parked his truck on the dirt road and walked toward the farmhouse, a calm expression on his face. Tom saw him from the window. He took a deep breath and went to meet him outside. "I warned you to stay off this property," Tom said firmly. Burke smiled. "I just wanted to talk." "No trouble," Tom shook his head. "We have nothing to discuss. Leave and never come back." The man's smile faded. He studied Tom carefully, then finally nodded. "You're serious." "I'll go for now, but secrets like that don't stay hidden forever." Tom stood his ground, his jaw tight. "The secret belongs to my family. Don't try to take it." Burke walked away slowly and left, this time without looking back. Tom felt tension leave his shoulders. For the moment, the farm was safe. After Burke's departure, Tom realized something important. He could not live in fear. He had to focus on rebuilding the farm, on creating a life for Lena. The gold was important, but it was also a burden if it made them fearful. His daughter needed happiness, not worry. Over the next few weeks, they worked together. Tom repaired the barn, fixed broken windows, and painted the farmhouse. Lena helped wherever she could, carrying small tools, watering the plants, and cheering her father on. Slowly, the farm started to look alive again. Tom also began planting vegetables, fruits, and flowers. He learned how to care for chickens and even tried raising a few goats. Every day brought challenges, but each day also brought small victories. The farm was growing, and with it, their hope. One evening after a long day of work, Tom sat on the porch watching Lena run through the fields. She laughed as she chased a butterfly. He felt a peace he had never known. For years, life had been hard, lonely, and uncertain. Now he had a home, a purpose, and the chance to protect the person he loved most. He thought about the gold once more. It was a fortune hidden for decades. It could solve every problem he had ever faced. But he realized something even more valuable: the farm, the land, the freedom to work and grow together, and Lena's happiness were worth more than money. The next morning, he decided to make a plan for the future. He would register the farm properly, create safe storage for the gold, and continue building their life here. He would hire trustworthy people to help if needed. He knew the secret would never be completely gone, but it would be safe and they would be ready for any challenge. Days turned into weeks, and the farm slowly transformed. The garden grew strong, vegetables ripened, and the apple trees began to bloom. Chickens clucked happily in their pen, and goats roamed the fenced pasture. Lena learned to care for them all, and her knowledge and love for the farm grew each day. One afternoon, as they worked together near the barn, Lena asked, "Daddy, do you think we'll ever find more treasure under the land?" Tom laughed gently, brushing dirt from his hands. "Maybe, Lena, but even if we don't, we already found something better. We have each other and we have this farm." She smiled and hugged him tightly. "I'm glad we stayed here." Tom held her close and looked across the fields. The wind swayed the tall grass and the sun shone bright. In that moment, he realized that they had more than wealth. They had safety, happiness, and freedom. He knew now that those things could never be taken away. Later that week, Mr. Hill came to visit again. He looked at the farm with approval. "You've done good work here, Tom. Raymond would be proud." Tom smiled. "Thank you. It's been hard, but it feels right." Mr. Hill nodded. "You've done more than repair a farm. You've built a home and a future. That's worth more than anything hidden in a safe." Tom felt proud. The farm was theirs now, and with hard work it would grow into something lasting. As the sun set on Green Valley, Tom and Lena sat on the porch together. The sky was painted in orange, pink, and purple, reflecting on the fields. The barn, the house, and the garden all looked alive and full of promise. "Daddy," Lena said quietly, "I like our farm. Can we stay here forever?" Tom smiled and held her hand. "Yes, Lena, this is our home. We'll stay here, grow here, and protect it together." For the first time in years, Tom felt free. The gold remained hidden and safe, but it was no longer the most important thing. He had something priceless: the love of his daughter, the peace of the land, and the knowledge that they had built a life of their own choosing. The farm was no longer abandoned. It was alive with laughter, work, and hope. The past secrets were behind them, and the future was theirs to shape. Tom looked at Lena playing in the grass and whispered to himself, "We did it, Lena, we really did it." That night, as they both slept, the farm stood quietly under the stars, strong and safe. The gold remained hidden, the past remained a mystery, but the present was filled with love and hard work. Together they had found not just a fortune, but something far greater: a home, a life, and a future filled with promise. Green Valley had welcomed them, and the farm had given them everything they had ever hoped for. Tom knew that no matter what challenges came, they would face them together. As father and daughter, farmers of their own land, and protectors of the secret that had once haunted the place. Life was not just about treasure or wealth. It was about courage, love, and building something lasting. Tom smiled as he closed his eyes, listening to the gentle sounds of the farm. Lena's quiet breathing, the rustling of the wind in the trees, and the soft hum of the land felt like music. This was their beginning, and it was perfect.